If you're unfamiliar with Ava Max, she's a pop star and songwriter who mainly does a lot of dance pop, synth pop, Eurodance songs in that realm. And a lot of her songs have gone viral on social media, primarily TikTok, I'm pretty sure. Probably one of her first big songs was Not Your Barbie Girl, which was released in 2018.
Not your Barbie girl, I'm living in my own world. I am plastic.
The lyrics are in conversation with Aqua's Barbie Girl, with Ava portraying herself as the opposite of the vapid Barbie stereotype.
I'm a blonde female girl in a fantasy world. Dress me up, make it time.
Not necessarily Barbie herself, because Ava does describe herself as living lavishly like Barbie, but unlike the doll, she's not a possession to be owned. Production-wise, the melody from Aqua's Barbie Girl is also interpolated, so the original writers have credits on Not Your Barbie Girl, along with Ava and her team, of course. Ava's official debut single, Sweet But Psycho, was released just days after Not Your Barbie Girl.
Oh, she's sweet but a psycho, a little bit psycho. At night she's screaming.
The song was also produced by famed pop producer Circuit, and it also went on to become viral on TikTok a couple years later, which I'm sure is where a lot of people, myself included, heard it for the first time. It's a cute dance pop song inspired by a phrase Ava's parents apparently used to say about her, and how women who are outspoken are often mislabeled as crazy or psycho. Because of Sweet But Psycho's virality, it also peaked at number 10 on the Hot 100 in 2020. This song doesn't contain any samples or interpolations, but some critics still felt that it was uninspired because of the prevalence at that time of so many other songs talking about how women are misrepresented as crazy, or even do wear the title proudly sometimes. I also do feel like, particularly in the later 2010s, we had so many pop songs that reference mental health, either as a critique, metaphor, unintended glamorization. And so I do agree that that could have worked against Ava in a sense. I felt like songs with this theme ended up becoming guilty pleasures, or they were viewed as such, because they were often accused of aestheticizing mental health, no matter how earnest the song was. And because of this, it seems like any pop song of this kind was written off as cheesy, when really there are some decent ones for every bad one. In addition, Sweet But Psycho was considered to not necessarily be fresh in its sound, earning Ava comparisons to artists like Lady Gaga and Katy Perry. In their review of the track, Stereo Gum wrote, "It's easy to see why Sweet But Psycho has been such a hit overseas. Its particular brand of dance pop cheese reminds me a bit of Eurodance's hits like La Bouche's Be My Lover, Eiffel 65's Blue Dabba Dee, or Cascada's Every Time We Touch. Albeit with that genre's relentless 4/4 thump subbed out for a measured synth surge native to modern top 40 radio. Even more so, it reminds me of early Lady Gaga electropop jams like Just Dance, Poker Face, Telephone, and Bad Romance. Max gets that comparison a lot, and rightfully so. Besides the sound of her music, her age and ostentatious presentation suggests that she probably went through a heavy Gaga phase at some point. Others with a less critical opinion noted that while Sweet But Psycho may not have been an earth-shattering pop offering, it was still fun to listen to and full of catchy phrases. And likely because the song was such a hit, and maybe just because it was barely 2 years old at that point, Sweet But Psycho was included on Ava's debut album, Heaven and Hell. The lead for this album, Kings and Queens, was released on March 12th of 2020, so just in time for a viral lockdown run, which is what also happened with Sweet But Psycho.
Kings had their queens on the throne. We would pop champagne and raise a toast.
Kings and Queens is another girl empowerment song about how the world would be in a better place if queens, aka women, were allowed as much power in the world as kings, aka men. The song was co-produced by Circuit and Red One, who coincidentally is well known for a lot of earlier collaborations with Gaga. The story makes a lot of medieval fantasy and fairy tale references, primarily one about how women aren't damsels in distress who need to be saved. Ava apparently made a similar comment during a studio session, and that's how this version of the lyrics for Kings and Queens came about after several drafts. Ava later also said in an interview that while Kings and Queens focused mainly on gender equality, her experience growing up with parents who were immigrants also influenced the song. And she said, "But also, I grew up in an Albanian household. My parents didn't know any English. They came to this country with nothing. My dad rolled up jeans as a pillow growing up for months because he didn't have money to buy a pillow. So I saw them struggle, and I saw them not treated fairly growing up. At school as well. I was never accepted. I was bullied." Kings and Queens is also notable for its interpolation of Bonnie Tyler's If You Were a Woman and I Was a Man.
If you were a woman and I was a man, wouldn't be so hard.
Another song that imagines a world in which the speaker's gender could be switched. I was gonna say that Kings and Queens personally always reminded me of Bon Jovi's You Give Love a Bad Name. Both were penned by Desmond Child, and he ended up reworking the lyrics for Bon Jovi after Bonnie's song underperformed.
And
and it doesn't seem like the interpolation was used as evidence of Ava's unoriginality, so to speak. And Kings and Queens was followed by 2 more singles from Heaven and Hell, Who's Laughing Now, and OMG What's Happening. Who's Laughing Now is a more mid-tempo dance pop song with a bit of a tropical reggae feel to it. I'd never heard this song before, but I found it to be very catchy. It's basically what you would want out of a pop song. Like, it's probably inspired by something personal, but it is still general enough for you to project your own feelings and your own situation onto it, which makes you get into the song more. And you can probably have most of the lyrics nailed by the second or third listen, but the song still doesn't feel empty. OMG What's Happening, I would say it kind of gives me the vibes of one of those later 2010s DJ pop girl collaborations, but one that breaks into a fun, twangy disco pop song.
Didn't know I was alone till I was running to your heart.
It's one of those I swear I wouldn't catch feelings, but here I am songs that's emphasized by that intoxicating dance beat. Again, I'm not a regular Ava Max listener, so this is maybe my only 3rd or 4th non-viral song of hers that I've heard, but my first thought was like, okay, she can make a catchy song. And I also realized that apparently a lot of her music is in line with the pop that I like. Heaven and Hell's final single, My Head and My Heart, was released in November of 2020. Unlike the previous 2, this one also has an interpolation, as it interpolates ATCs around the world, also known as La La La. Like a lot of her other pop peers, Ava said that when she released the song, or made it a single at least, it was to give people something to dance to during lockdown. And lyrically, the song sees Ava stuck between love and logic, aka her head and her heart, and still feeling called to be with someone who's no good for her. And as someone who's not really in the Ava Max loop, so to speak, it felt like this was around the time that it seemed like Ava Max was earning the reputation of every song is a sample, or technically an interpolation. And of course, the implication under this critique is that Ava basically needed to use another artist's song in her own in order to get a hit. And again, this was happening in tandem with other critiques on her originality, like the Lady Gaga comparisons, some Dua Lipa comparisons, and others. But regardless of the criticism, Ava has continued on with her interpolations. Her sophomore album, Diamonds Dancefloors, was released in early 2023 and was preceded by a few singles dropped in 2022. The first, Maybe You're the Problem, is a rugged synth-pop song very much in line with a lot of the dance pop the early 2020s is known for now.
And I think you should take a second just to look at your reflection, baby, maybe you're the problem.
Apparently, this song got a lot of comparisons production-wise to The Weeknd's Blinding Lights, which I can definitely hear. But critics didn't seem too displeased with this song, with women in pop even calling it underrated potentially. $1 Million Baby, the album's second single, has a similar competitive dance pop vibe to it, building up to this very punching chorus. It's a Eurodance song that's a clear nod to ones that came before it, and it also interpolates LeAnn Rimes' 2000 song Can't Fight the Moonlight.
You can try to resist, try to hide from my kiss. In the dark of the night, she got danger on her mind. She's $1 million baby.
Ava speeds up the tempo of the melody in her song, making it more suited to an unrelenting night on the dance floor. Also different from LeAnn's version, which is about an irresistible romance. Ava sings about how she's able to pick herself up time and again after setbacks and turn her tears into diamonds. And Ava said that she was inspired to interpolate LeAnn's song because she loves the movie Coyote Ugly, and it made her LeAnn Rimes fan. And also because she liked that very short phrase, "in the dark," in the lyrics of LeAnn's song, and thought that she could have an interesting take on it in her own song. In total, Ava put out 6 singles for Diamonds Dancefloors. And out of those 6, $1 Million Baby is the only one that interpolates another song. And I did my best to look, but it doesn't seem like any of these singles vastly outperformed each other, at least what I can glean from having to look at a bunch of different countries' charts. It looks like they all got pretty decent reception, with Ava being able to secure a #1 in Hungary with both Maybe You're the Problem and $1 Million Baby, a #1 in Sweden with The Single Weapons, and a #2 on the same chart with Dancing's Done. She's definitely more popular in Europe because it seems like across the board, all of these singles went top 10 in at least one European country, but often it was several. And this makes sense because from what I understand, that dance pop sound is far more popular over there than in the States. Also in 2023, Ava Max put out Choose Your Fighter from the Barbie soundtrack. I think this song is fun, and I do still listen to it because I really do like the Barbie soundtrack overall. This one's definitely video game inspired and can't be perfect for the Barbie movie, and it's another up-tempo synth-pop song with some game-sounding sound effects. And Choose Your Fighter is basically about doing what you want, being who you want to be, dressing your avatar, aka your body, however you want, and all of these things are essentially what Barbie herself is about. The most negative and the most constant critique I did see about Choose Your Fighter is that while the song is fun, it's basically got the same melody as Kings and Queens. And while I still like the song and still think it's fun, I definitely can hear the similarities, but it doesn't technically use that Desmond Child melody. And though, as I've been pointing out, this every song's an interpolation or sample conversation had been bubbling for a couple years, but it seems like Whatever, Ava's following single and her first in 2024, that was the interpolation that broke the internet's back, it seems. And Whatever is a collaboration between Ava Max and Kygo, which interpolates Shakira's Whenever, Wherever.
Whatever, whatever, we were never good together. I'll be here and you. Whenever, wherever, we're meant to be together. I'll be there.
As you can imagine, or probably saw in real time if you're online like me, a lot of people were over it and did not respond positively to Ava's clips teasing the song. Whatever was actually the lead single on Kygo's own self-titled album, and to date the song has nearly 400 million streams on Spotify, so definitely not a flop. It also went top 5 on a lot of European dance charts. For example, it peaked at number 4 in the UK dance charts and number 15 on their singles charts overall. And in the States, however, it peaked at number 1 on Bubbling Under, which, I'm sure the internet was normal about. Because it feels like over the years that chart position specifically has become a meme almost. One comment, kind of critique about Ava Max and Kygo's interpolation of Whenever, Wherever that I actually did think was a solid point was someone saying, "My issue is that Whenever, Wherever is so Shakira that it's impossible to make it sound different. Like, imagine if someone sampled Crazy in Love or Bad Romance, it wouldn't work either." And I can agree, some songs are so iconic to that artist that it is hard to sample, interpolate, or even cover that song and have it land. But I can also see that not being a problem for others. For example, like I was mentioning, if you've never even heard Whenever, Wherever, all of this wouldn't really matter to you. And even if you've heard the song and just don't care, then it doesn't matter to you either. In response to the song though, Shakira did post Whatever on her story saying that she liked the version and tagged Ava Max and Kygo in it. And she, Tim Mitchell, and Gloria Estefan, who wrote Whenever, Wherever, of course they all have writing credits on Whatever. Pretty soon after Whatever dropped, discourse shifted online a little bit, going from simply Ava uses too many interpolations or samples to is Ava Max the queen of samples? And I also genuinely can't tell if it was fans who bestowed the title on her in earnest, or if it was a more backhanded thing done by people over Ava's frequent samples and interpolations, since people definitely did fall on both sides. Either way, Ava was asked about being the so-called queen of samples in an interview, and she gave this response.
It's actually interesting because I know a lot of artists do samples, but they always poke at me about the samples. Like if you look at some other people's discographies, you're like, whoa, they have way more samples than Ava. But I think I think the internet likes to poke at Ava Max. That's what they like, because not every song is a sample. And also when I do a sample, I do it tastefully. So,
and I do know, of course, that there is going to be debate as to what tastefully sampling is. But I will say one aspect of sampling or interpolating a lot of people typically don't seem to enjoy is when that track is being used as the base for a song's instrumental with some tweaks here and there. Other than Ava Max, recently songs like Nicki Minaj and Kim Petras' Alone, Troye Sivan's Got Me Started, Lotto's Big Energy, and honestly so many others have been criticized for this, even if some people do like those songs. But on the other hand, there are so many songs thought of as classics now, like Madonna's Hung Up, MIA's Paper Planes, Beyonce's Crazy in Love, even Drake's Hotline Bling, and so many more that essentially do the same thing. So sometimes I don't even think it's a matter of the actual practice itself, but just what lands and what doesn't, and you just never really know sometimes. I did want to kind of look at the data as to how many of Ava's songs include a sample or interpolation as opposed to how many that don't. That's part of the reason I made such a point of talking about her singles, especially her album singles, because those are typically the songs of an artist that you're going to be most familiar with, especially if you don't listen to them regularly or dive into their music. So let's look at Ava's discography in general and see how many of these songs use a sample or interpolation of another artist's song. And I'm only going to include songs where Ava is the lead artist. And to get this info, I did a combination of looking at the writing credits for her songs, using sites like Who Sampled, and also cross-reference articles already listing this information out. And so on screen, at least with the data I was able to pull, while it seems like most of her songs are interpolations, that isn't necessarily true. But Ava does have a decent amount, and quite a few of these are some hits of hers. But I also want to acknowledge not everyone is saying it is even most of Ava's songs that are interpolations, just that it feels like it's too many in their opinion. And though I only did songs where Ava's the lead artist, she does also feature on a David Guetta song which samples Suzanne Vega's Tom's Diner. And it seems like there's also some debate on So Am I, which is on Heaven and Hell, but was also released back in 2019. It seems like several forums and websites say that that song samples Anastasia's Left Outside Alone. None of those writers are credited on So Am I, but to me it does sound inspired at the least.
Oh, but it's all get a bit different, 'cause baby, so am I. All my life I've been waiting for you to bring up fairy tale.
And there are probably no stats for this, but I wonder how much of the average artist's discography is samples or interpolations. Because I'm sure there would be a ton of factors to influence this, so it would probably vary by genre, but it would be cool if that was something that we could know. Recently, and this is what mainly inspired me to make this video, Ava took to the internet to ask hackers to stop leaking her music. Basically, everyone who makes music gets hacked or leaked nowadays, with it also being recent news that a hacker who leaked and sold songs from people like BB Rexa and Coldplay was sentenced to 21 months in prison over this. And last week, when Ava posted on Instagram about these leaks, she said, "A lot of records I write do not ever see the light of day, and I understand your frustration, but this is not right. I write a lot of records I wish I could put out. This is one of 5 songs I found today. It's not right. I've never posted about this since the leak of my second album prematurely. Please respect my art so that I can keep working on making the songs I want to put out that make sense for my project and who I am. Perfect for you." I saw this article initially on Reddit, surprise, with the headline that Ava wanted fans to respect her art, which prompted the immediate response in the comments, "What art?" And at this point, I honestly truly feel like a handful of people would have commented that regardless of whichever pop girl asked for her music to stop being leaked. But relatively unique to Ava, I would think, is the sentiment of her music isn't art because most of it is a sample or interpolation of someone else's song, or the joke, how can a song be leaked if it's mostly a song that's already been released? And again, definitely feel like people have the right to not like Ava's music or not be fond of her frequently interpolating songs. But I also don't necessarily know how I feel about the I'm okay with X person's art being disrespected so long as I don't personally view it as art. To me, it's very much a might not agree with what you say, but I'll defend your right to say it type tease. Another aspect of Ava's artistry that intrigues me or that I'm just curious about is whether she foresaw kind of being known as the sample girl or the queen of samples. Of course, you kind of can't really control which of your songs become a hit, but you can control if you continue doing something in your music no matter what it is. So maybe it was a case of these songs went viral, let's continue down that direction, or even I just like making music this way, so I'm gonna keep making music this way. Because I can admit now that I don't really agree that every single song of hers or even the majority are samples or interpolations now that I've looked into it. I'll also admit that I held that belief before looking into it. It didn't make me hate Ava Max or anything, but it did truly make me less eager to get into songs of hers that weren't directly served to me through an algorithm, and some of these songs I sought out for this video I actually really did enjoy. And I know I am not responsible for paying Ava Max's bills, but I was wondering if this financially makes sense. Because you've got to split the funds more ways the more people are credited on your songs, but of course the more money a song makes, the bigger those cuts are. And while researching, I did find a Rolling Stone article that sort of answers this question. Released in 2021, it was written by Ethan Millman and details the story of an LA writing camp the previous summer where writers were creating songs to pitch to a lot of pop girls. And they were specifically encouraged to write songs that had interpolations in them. Fanny Graham was one of the writing camp's organizers, and she also works for Primary Wave, which is an indie music publisher, and they've got publishing rights to songs from artists like Stevie Nicks and Bob Marley. And it's become relatively popular now for publishing companies to buy the catalogs of or the rights to the songs of very well-known musicians with this very purpose in mind. And she was saying that at this writers' camp, they gave writers a playlist of songs that they already owned, that way that they couldn't have a starting point to include these interpolations. So still the space to be creative, but sort of a template to build the song around, with some writers probably deviating from that more than others. And Millman notes, publishers have a vested interest in getting tracks interpolated. They get revenue on the new songs if their signed songwriters have credits on the tracks, and interpolations and samples often drive streams to their original material to boot. So I would think Ava and other artists are somewhat intentional about the songs that they interpolate, or their teams are, or maybe they're not in particular cases where they're just really, really wanting to use a certain song. In their observation on how trendy interpolations and samples seem to become in 2021, the Rolling Stone article seems to kind of position Ava's Kings and Queens as a starting point for some of these songs as it came out in 2020. And Millman also notes that interpolations, while there is clear money to be made with them, they do often happen regardless, and they're usually just a sign that the artist or the songwriter listens to music. Probably in a similar way that writers and authors who make frequent allusions, we don't consider them to be uncreative idiots, we just would consider them to be well read. And I don't disagree with anything Millman was pointing out in his Rolling Stone article, but of course it was written over 3 years ago at this point, so I do think people are a little less into samples and interpolations than we used to be, especially those very prominent, quote-unquote, obvious ones. But that doesn't mean that they just cease to exist, because they're still very much around and were present in songs even released this past year. I would be very curious to know, though, whether writers are still currently being encouraged to write interpolation-infused songs, or if we're transitioning out of that wave. But maybe not if they still make money, even if people say that they're kind of over it and we still stream it. As always, thank you so very much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe so that you can stick around for more. Also, if you'd like to become a channel member and get early access to videos, the link is in the description. And again, thank you so very much for watching. I love you all so very much, and we'll see you so very soon. Bye-bye.